Welcome to the Politica UK Infopod. After yesterday's surge in oil prices driven by the Iran war, attention is turning to which countries have the most to lose if the energy shock continues. Three regions stand out: China, India, and Europe. Each of them relies heavily on imported oil, and each faces a different kind of vulnerability if the conflict disrupts supply from the Middle East. Let's start with China. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil. A large share of that oil comes from the Persian Gulf and must pass through the Strait of Hormuz before reaching Asian markets. That means any disruption to shipping in the Gulf immediately raises concerns in Beijing. China does have some buffers. It has built strategic oil reserves and has diversified supplies by buying energy from Russia, Africa, and Central Asia. But the Chinese economy still depends heavily on stable energy imports. When oil prices surge, manufacturing costs rise, shipping costs increase, and export industries begin to feel pressure. And because China sits at the center of global supply chains, the effects can ripple across the entire world economy. Next comes India. India is now the world's third largest importer of oil, and it is especially sensitive to price shocks. Unlike China, India has fewer strategic reserves and a lower average income per person. That means higher oil prices translate very quickly into higher costs for transportation, electricity, and food. Fuel inflation has historically been one of the most politically sensitive issues in India. When petrol prices rise sharply, governments in New Delhi often face immediate public pressure. So for India, the Iran war is not just a geopolitical concern, it is a domestic economic risk. Finally, there is Europe. Europe is less dependent on Middle Eastern oil than some Asian economies, but it still imports large amounts of energy from global markets. And Europe is already recovering from the energy shock triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Another spike in oil prices could slow economic growth across the continent, just as inflation was beginning to ease. Higher fuel costs affect everything from airlines to manufacturing to household heating bills. For European policymakers, the fear is not simply high prices, but the possibility of another prolonged energy crisis. Put all of this together, and a pattern begins to emerge. The Iran war is not only a military conflict, it is also an energy crisis unfolding in real time. Countries that export oil may see higher revenues, but large importers, especially China, India, and much of Europe, are watching the Strait of Hormuz and the global oil market with increasing anxiety. Because in modern geopolitics, energy supply is one of the most powerful forces shaping economic stability. And if the conflict continues to push oil prices higher, the economic consequences may stretch far beyond the Middle East. This Infopod was brought to you by Politica UK.